Hello, class. How are you? Chapter 6 homework. 2 exercises. Exercise 6 and exercise 3 and 7. So let's take a look at exercise 3. Determining break-even point, target profit, margin of safety. All right, here's the problem. Cove's Cake is a local bakery. Price and cost information is as follows. The selling price per cake, $17. The variable cost per cake. Ingredients, $2.50. Direct labor, $1.40. Overhead, 20 cents. If you add these things together, I think it comes out to $4.10. Fixed cost per month, $3,850. So they want the break-even point, both in units and in dollars. The margin of safety, if they sell 450 cakes a month, the number of cakes that Cove has to sell to generate a $2,000 profit. So just like last time, I already did the problem, so you don't have to watch me type, which must have been painful. So let's take a look. Break-even point. Sales price minus variable cost equals contribution margin per unit. So in this case, it came out to $12.90. Let me see if I can make that even bigger. $12.90. So how many units do I have to sell to break even? If I take the fixed cost, which is $3,850, and I divide it by the contribution margin, which is $12.90, that comes out to 298 cakes. I had to round that, right? I think it came out to a little more than 298. I rounded to 298. So I have to sell 298 cakes to break even. Now, what about in terms of sales? Well, if I multiply 298 cakes times the selling price of $17 a cake, that comes out to $5,066. Now, there's another way to calculate sales dollars, is to take the fixed cost and divide it by that contribution margin ratio. Do you remember that in the text? Right? The selling price of a cup of coffee was $2.50, and the variable cost was $1. So the contribution was $2.50, I think it was. No, is that what it was? $1.50, right? $1.50. And if I take $1.50 and put it over $2.50, it came out to 60%. You remember? So here, if I take the $12.90 contribution margin and divide it by the selling price, it comes out to 0.7588. And if I take the fixed cost and divide it by 0.7588, I get $5,073.80, right? It's not quite the same answer as I got here, and the difference is due to rounding. All right, so just be aware of that. In terms of doing the problem on Connect, I think I would be inclined to do it this way, right? You don't want weird answers in Connect because it'll mark it wrong. Now, what about the margin of safety? Well, we want to take the current sales divided by the break-even sales. Now, in this case, they decided to do that in units. In the textbook, they used dollars. If you look at the example in the textbook. But here what they did is they said, okay, if I sell 450 cakes a month and my break even is $298, my margin of safety is 152 cakes. And if I multiply 152 cakes times the selling price of $17 a cake, it comes out to $2,584. Right now, target profit, that's the last one. To calculate target profit, we need to take the fixed cost and add the target profit and divide it by the contribution margin per cake. So the fixed cost of $3,850, the target profit was $2,000. If I add those two together, it comes out to $5,850. And if I divide that by the contribution margin of $12.90 per cake, I would have to sell 453 cakes to earn that profit. And this answer is also rounded. So that takes care of exercise 6-3. Let's take a look at exercise 7. Exercise 7. Now, this is a little more involved, you see it? But it's basically the same thing. They want us to do break even, units and sales dollars. They want us to do target profit. And then they change up some of the variables, right? If something changes, how does it affect everything else? So, Izzy's Ice Cream has the following price and cost information. The selling price of a sundae is $5, and the variable cost of making a sundae, ingredients $1.35, direct labor 45 cents, overhead 20 cents. If I add those things together, I think it comes out to $2 even. The fixed costs are $3,000. So what's the break-even point in units and sales dollars? All right, so here we go. The selling price is $5 a sundae, and the variable cost of $2, right? When we add the three variable costs together, it came out to $2. $5 minus $2 is $3. Contribution margin is $3 a unit. And if I wanted to calculate that contribution margin ratio, I take the contribution margin and put it over the selling price. So $3 over $5 is 60%. What's the break-even point? How many sundaes do I have to sell to break even? Fixed cost divided by contribution margin per unit. Fixed cost of $3,000. The contribution margin per unit is $3, right? Contribution margin, $3. That comes out to 1,000. I have to sell 1,000 ice cream sundaes to break even. Now, what about dollars? How many sales dollars do I need to generate to break even? Two ways I could do it. I could take 1,000 sundaes times $5 is $5,000, or I could take fixed cost divided by contribution margin ratio, 3,000 divided by 0.6, 60% is 0.6. That comes out to $5,000, right? So this is probably a little bit easier to do, but you may see a problem one day where you don't know this, so you may have to resort to this. Now, what about part 2? How many sundaes must be sold to generate a profit of $6,000? Target profit. Fixed cost plus target profit divided by contribution margin per unit. 3,000 plus 6,000 is 9,000. 9,000 divided by 3, 3,000 sundaes. I would have to sell 3,000 ice cream sundaes in order to generate that $6,000 profit. See how useful this is? This is good stuff to know. Okay, let's take a look at part 3. Part 3 is where they change things. Calculate Izzy's new break-even point for each of the following independent scenarios. What if everything stayed the same except we had to decrease the selling price by 50 cents? So the selling price went from $5 to $4.50, but everything else stayed the same. So the new selling price is $4.50. The variable cost remained $2. The contribution now is $2.50. What's the break-even point? $3,000 in fixed costs divided by $2.50 contribution margin, 1,200 Sundays. I have to sell now 1,200 Sundays. If I just reduced my selling price 50 cents, I would have to sell 200 more Sundays than I did before, right? Before we said it was 1,000. Now it comes out to be 1,200. Let's take a look at Part B. Part B says, what if everything stayed the same except fixed costs decreased by $300 a month? All right, so that's here, Part B. If the fixed costs decreased $300 a month, your fixed costs would now be what? They'd be $2,700. 3,000 minus 300 is 2,700. And the contribution margin is still $3. 2,700 divided by 3 is 900 Sundays. 900 Sundays to break even. So if I could reduce my fixed cost a little bit, I would have to sell less ice cream in order to break even. Let's take a look at Part C. Part C says, what if variable costs increase by 50 cents a Sunday? Now, what's the difference between Part A and Part C? The net effect is the same, right? In Part A, the sales price went from $5 to $4.50. Here, the variable costs are going to increase from $2 to $2.50. So the answer is going to wind up being the same. You'll see. All right, so what happens now? The sales price remains $5, but the variable cost increased 50 cents. The contribution margin now is $2.50. So break-even point, $3,000 fixed cost divided by $2.50. Contribution margin is 1,200 Sundays, right? 1,200 Sundays. Part 4. Based on the original information, how many Sundays must Izzy sell to generate a profit of $10,000 if the sales price increased by 50% and the variable cost increased by 30 cents? So now, how is that going to affect things? Target profit, remember, we need to take the fixed cost and add the profit. So the fixed costs were $3,000 and the profit is 10. So I'm going to take $13,000 and divide it by contribution margin. The contribution margin now, to calculate that, what's going to happen? The selling price is going to go from $5 to $5.50, and the variable costs are going to go from what? $2 to $2.30. So the sales price is now $5.50. The variable costs are $2.30. The contribution margin is $3.20. And target profit, I take the fixed cost and I add the profit and divide it by the contribution margin. Fixed cost is 3. Target profit is 10. Total 13. 13,000 divided by contribution margin of 320 comes out to 4,063 Sundays. And that number is also rounded. 4,063 Sundays. So that's it for chapter 6. Homework, I only had these 2 exercises to do. Next, chapter 7.